What's going on, everybody? Ryan Miner here of the Faceoff Sports Network. And if you're here, it's because you're in the playoffs. Thank you. We're glad you made it. We hope it helped you make it there. If not, well, at least you're in the fantasy football and you love to see, what's going on next. So let's kick it off here with the worst matchup for Week 15 in fantasy football. And looking at that, you're thinking, oh, man, what do I do? You're panicking, you're freaking out. But don't fret. These are just based on matchups, based on data I've collected over the last 5 weeks that I've put together. Kind of also look at 3 weeks of play because as time changes, defense do also adjust. And a lot of times, a lot of other areas, sites, TV will kind of tell you a broad view of point of how fantasy defense have been playing from week 1 to week 14. So if you hear they give up the most fantasy points, that is usually the overall from week to week, from week 1 all the way to week 14. They are the number one worst team against it, which could be false. And they could be, number 15 over the last 3 weeks, number 10 over the last 5. So enough's enough. We're going to look over the worst matchups here in week 15 between the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Without further ado, let's look at the quarterbacks with the worst schedules for week 15. We have the Bills, the Lions, the Rams, the Patriots, and the Seahawks. So that brings up our first player, Josh Allen. You're not benching him. He's elite. His rushing upside alone against the Lions should be enough to help him. I'm not concerned for the number one QB here. I'm not going to waste your time. Let's move on to the next player. We're going to hit Jared Goff. Now, I'm a little concerned on this one just because Jared Goff is also more like a pocket passer. It's very similar to that of Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has rushing upside. Jared Goff carries none. So for me, I like this. Yeah, you can say I'm the homer. I got the Lions shirt on here, Lions jersey behind me. It's easy to say that. So, but Jared Goff's had one of the better offensive lines. I like him in this tough matchup as I'm hoping for a shootout similar to that of the Bills and Rams game from last week. If that's possible, I like it a lot because Jared Goff should do something. He has a good receiving core still. Of Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got Dave Montgomery in the backfield, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta starting to come back to life here. So I would proceed with caution with Jared Goff, back end QB1, but lower expectations a little bit. We're not going to look for. We'd love to have a 3 to 4 touchdown game, but don't expect it here and there. Now, my next player that I'm who has a bad schedule and who I'm also looking at benching this week is Drake May versus the Cardinals. Now, May is taking on the Cardinals defense, who have held quarterbacks below 18.5 fantasy points in 6 of the last 7 games. May's receiver core is not quite the best. He's shown a lot of potential, but, he still has that rookie conundrum. He needs a true number one wide receiver there. So, maybe next year, but this year I'm passing on Drake May, and I'm passing on Drake May this week alone. My next player is Matthew Stafford, and he gets the San Francisco 49ers, who just basically shut down Caleb Williams last week. But, Caleb Williams, I think, had 17 points, 2 touchdowns. It was a low passing volume game for him. But, over the last 5 weeks, only one quarterback threw for more than 164 yards against the 49ers. And it wasn't Josh Allen. It was actually Geno Smith who did that. So Stafford has been having good games as of late. But the 49ers have actually been a very, very tough defense. And they allowed the 5 fewest points, the 5th fewest points over the last 5 weeks to the quarterback position. Excuse me. And then my final one we'll go over for this week is Geno Smith for the Packers. Now, Smith hasn't really been doing much during their win streak, as he scored less than 18 fantasy points over the last 4 games. This offense has been relying more on the run game. And you think it'd be more of a Ken Walker, but it's actually Zach Charbonnet. So the run game is the real winner here. If Ken Walker does come back, we can see him, punching it in, possibly, hopefully. But it's going to be taken away from Geno Smith and the offense. And the over that span, The Packers have given up the 7th least amount of points to fantasy football, the fantasy quarterback. So I'm benching him. I don't feel comfortable having him in my lineup, and you shouldn't either. Moving on, we're going to look at the running backs with the worst schedule for Week 15, and that is the Buffalo Bills, Chicago Bears, Indianapolis Colts, and the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, James Cook is coming off a dominant performance, Week 13 against the 49ers that was played in the snow. A lot of us all saw that Sunday night, that huge snowstorm. But, you go the next week, and you think last week, with how high the score was between the Rams and the Bills, that James Cook would have done something. He really didn't do much. It was all in the receiving game and in Josh Allen. He should look to struggle again also, as the Lions have been holding running backs below 13 fantasy points in their last 3 games. Yes, Josh Jacobs did score 3 touchdowns against them, but he also just managed to get 66 rushing yards on that. And the most yards by any running back since Week 9. Yeah, since Week 9. Yeah, sorry. He's been the most yards since running back since Week 9. And no running back to date has had over a 100-yard game. Not even close. I think 93 yards, I want to say, was the closest. But other than that, no good game. So if you have James Cook, you probably measure RB2. You're hoping for the best. You're hoping he does something in the passing game, especially in PPR, but lower expectations. Speaking of lower expectations, what can I say about DeAndre Swift? Yes, it's a NFC North matchup, a division rival. This is going to be a great game. This should be a busting game, but it's been a disaster lately just for Swift and the Bears. Swift has been held under 10 PPR points. PPR, something you think he would strive in, be a good pass catcher type of running back. So in the last 3 games, he's struggled. And that also includes 4 of his last 5. So he's been basically a RB3 at best. Now, Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier were able to score last week, but that was the first time since Week 8 anyone's done that. I expect the slump to continue here for DeAndre Swift. Excuse me. I don't know what it is. Every time I'm in my basement, I start coughing when I'm on here. All right. So back at it, Jonathan Taylor versus the Broncos. Outside of Derrick Henry, the Broncos have held running backs on average to at least 10 points. So if you're hoping for anything for Jonathan Taylor, it's kind of a hard task, especially with Anthony Richardson starting to take opportunities away. Now, on the bonus side, Jonathan Taylor is 78 yards away from 1,000 scrimmage yards, which is funny to say because a running back that we spent such high value on, thinking that, maybe the running game would be more of a benefit for Taylor with Anthony Richardson back there than a disbenefit, has not turned out that way. So we're hoping that Jonathan Taylor can do something. I don't think he does. I think the Colts struggle. I see Taylor's struggles continue. He might get you 10, 11, 12 fantasy points, especially in PPR league, but I wouldn't look any more than that. And then the final running back, which if you're starting him, congratulations, because I don't know what else to say. You're just hoping for a touchdown here, and he has all of 1 for the whole entire season. No, the most fantasy points he's had with that touchdown is about 9.5 points. Outside of that, you're looking at 4 to 5 fantasy points. So best case scenario, bench him. If you have someone else better, there's got to be someone better. Maybe Patrick Taylor's out there. Look at getting him off your waiver wire. Find someone else. Definitely, I'm not looking at starting him at all. Moving on, we will go to the wide receivers with the worst matchups for Week 15 here. And that is the Ravens, the Packers, the Rams, and the Steelers. So kicking it off with the Ravens, I'm going to go with Zay Flowers here. Now, Flowers has been a solid option over the back half of the season here. He kind of struggled. He had, up and down games beginning half of the season where you start him thinking, oh, here he goes. He doesn't go off. You bench him. And then that's when he goes off. You put him back in your lineup. You get what I mean, going back and forth. But surprisingly, as bad as the Giants are and as bad as their record is, they've been held receivers to single digits in the last 4 games. Outside of Terry McLaurin's 2 touchdowns, he only had, 19 yards that game? But A.J. Brown was the last one to have any significant yardage. I think it was 89 yards and a touchdown against this Giants defense. And that was all the way back in week 7. And I know I can understand it's hard to sit Zay Flowers. You're probably playing him as a wide receiver 3. Okay, you could do that. I would maybe sit him as a wide receiver 3, look at someone else, like, another matchup. See that, but maybe at best wide receiver 4 flex type play. Speaking of wide receivers, I'm having a hard time starting Jaden Reed. And if you started him last week, he had all of 1 target. And if you made it here with Jaden Reed in your lineup, congratulations. I don't know how you did it. That's amazing. 0 points, the same amount of fantasy points I had. So it's a hard start here. Give me 1 second to do this water real quick. Last week, if you had Christian Watson, you lit it up. Congratulations. But, playing this receiving core has kind of been hard lately, as it seems to go back and forth. You think, with Romeo Doubs out, would have made it easier for Jaden Reed to do something, but it seemed like the focus was more on Christian Watson and that of Tucker Kraft. But I'd be more comfortable benching any of these type of wide receivers against the Seattle Seahawks as the 6th toughest as of late against wide receivers. If you're starting a Packer here, you're hoping for a touchdown, and that's basically what Jaden Reed is right now, is touchdown or bust. Here's a funny one, a tough matchup this week, and that's going to be the Rams wide receivers of Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. However you want to go at it. Tough matchup. I'm not second guessing this one. I kind of laughed at this one because of how hard the matchup is. But, you're kind of these 3, like last time these 2 played together. Actually, last time they played San Francisco, these 2 weren't even on the field. This was back in week 3. Now looking at it, I have Nacua higher in my rankings. I have Nacua as a top 5. Kupp's back end top 10. But, like I said, 49ers are a tough matchup. But on the bonus side, receivers like Lamb and Justin Jefferson each put up over 100 yards and a touchdown. I think one of these 2 can at least do that at the least. I'm just trying to. It's a hard one to figure out who. You're starting them either way. I'd say these 2 would make up at least Matthew Stafford, 50% of Matthew Stafford's targets here this week. So start with confidence, even though it's a tough matchup. Speaking of tough matchup, who is a Steelers wide receiver that has a tough matchup? All of them. We're looking at George Pickens as doubtful this week, so you're playing with fire here if you had to start one of them, but most of the time, best of luck, bench them all. There's no one here worth starting. To wrap it up, we're going to kick off the tight ends with the worst schedules. We have the Ravens, the Bills, the Packers, Patriots, and Buccaneers. Is it really time to benchmark Andrews? Now, Giants are a middle-of-the-pack type of defense against tight ends. I mean, I really can't benchmark Andrews in most of my leagues. I'm sure most of you can't either. I'd say he's a back-end tight end 1, tight end 11, tight end 12, somewhere in that range. You're starting him. You're hoping he falls in the end zone. If they shut down the wide receiving game, maybe it's Mark Andrews who falls in the end zone, hopefully twice, and makes me eat crow on this one. The next tight ends I'm not excited to start. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. Surprisingly, the Lions have been number 2 against the tight end position as of late. Really shutting it down. Yes, Tucker Kraft got the touchdown last week, but we'll see what happens this week. Dalton Kincaid really hasn't been available. He's been out. Dawson Knox hasn't done much. I'm looking elsewhere here outside, with Josh Allen. I'm using his wide receivers. Like I said, I like Khalil Shakir. I still like Amari Cooper, just not as much, but Khalil Shakir. Tight ends, I'm going to go find someone else, stream someone else. As I said about the wide receivers for the Packers, I'm also benching Tucker Kraft this week. Now, it's not the top and it's not the toughest matchup, but Seattle's a top 10 defense against the tight ends. Although Kraft has been on a hot streak as of late, either scoring a touchdown or having 78 receiving yards in his last 3 games. If you have to start him, I'd start him back as more of a back end tight end one. I've seen rankings as high as 8. I'd still put him in the same area around Mark Andrews, if not high end tight end 2. Basically someone you're kind of looking at flexing in as your tight end positions as someone who's played the waiver wire, which most of us have gotten Tucker Kraft off the waiver wire. So your expectation is hoping for a touchdown, but I expect a down game from Tucker Kraft. Speaking of another waiver wire darling, and that was Hunter Henry. Now, this is a super tough matchup for the Cardinals. Not only was it tough for Drake May, but it's also tough for Hunter Henry, as Will Disley was the only tight end to score double-digit PPR points against this team. That's scary because last time that Tucker Kraft played against him, he was held to 13 yards. It was 1.5 fantasy points. It was really bad. So it's a tough game for Hunter Henry. Look elsewhere if you can. And then that will bring us to our final tight end for the week, and that's Cade Otton. Now, Cade Otton has been a fantasy darling over the last few weeks up until the last, I'd say around Thanksgiving week was the game. But the Chargers are number 1 against tight ends. And if you're not in a PPR league, I would totally pass on Cade Otton here. It's touchdown or bust, which how the whole tight end position really is in general. But this is one where I really think it's really touchdown or bust. I don't really see him getting the yardage. I can see this being more of a Mike Evans bounce back type game. And Cade Otton kind of be back on the back burner, possibly as the 3rd or 4th option of this team, depending on what we hear about Bucky Irving and how Rashad White's starting to come back into play. So Cade Otton, bench him if you have him. I am 100% not comfortable with starting him at all. Well, that'll do it for our Week 15 worst matchups. I'm Ryan Miner of the Faceoff Network. We'll catch you guys later.